So just to start off, I want to introduce myself. I'm Sergio Trevino. I'm the Lupe digital organizer, La Unión del Pueblo Entero, and I will be talking with Emma Guevara from the Sierra Club. We were supposed to put some headshots in here, but we didn't have time to take the headshots. Oh, before I go into the next slide, sorry. Eva, can you introduce yourself and tell us how you got involved in this campaign?
Sure. So in case you missed it, my name is Emma Guevara. I'm cool with any pronouns. I'm a lifelong Brownsville resident and I work for the Sierra Club. I'm currently the Brownsville organizer. I got involved with organizing with LNG and SpaceX, I guess more in a formal sense earlier this year when I got hired by Sierra Club, but I've been following the LNG issue for quite a while, and I've been active with the SpaceX issue for probably at least a year now, I would say. It's kind of hard to remember. But yeah.
Well, thanks for participating today and all the work that you've done. I know on our social media, you recently shared an op-ed on Trucha talking about what reporters should know or ask when it comes to SpaceX. And in the article, you mentioned that a majority of reporters are writing articles, they paint an unrealistic and unfamiliar picture of our home. What did you mean by that?
Thank you so much, Myra. When I said that, I think what I was trying to get at was kind of along the lines of that Elon Musk interview that people have shared clips and have quoted quite a few times, where he made a comment about how nobody lives around here, so they might as well, they can just blow stuff up. And I think that that's the unrealistic and unfamiliar picture that's really being painted by a lot of SpaceX supporters, a lot of Elon Musk fans, by Elon Musk himself, and by the media that's reporting around this. I think that unless you are from Brownsville and have lived here for a really long time, or at least a decent amount of time, you might not really understand exactly how close all of this is to us. So a lot of people like to make it seem like it's just, this random facility out in the middle of nowhere and there's nothing around it but like beach and a couple animals, but like that could not be further from the truth. We have multiple communities surrounding the area. We have so much wildlife. We have so many people out there, so many people that use this beach for a lot of different reasons. Yeah, there you go. Becca just put the exact quote in the chat. I'll read it out loud. Most likely it's going to happen at our Brownsville location because we've got a lot of land with nobody around. And so if it blows up, it's cool. Yeah, that's so unrealistic. That's not what goes on here at all. We have a whole thriving city. It's not the middle of nowhere. There's not just, 50 people out here. There's at least 200,000 in Brownsville alone and over 750,000 people in Matamoros alone.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people who are affected.
Yeah, that is true. I actually lived in Cameron County for about 7 years. And even then, I still just got to see a glimpse of what Brownsville and Boca Chica Beach is. And
yeah, it's huge.
So how would you describe Brownsville and Boca Chica Beach to someone who's never or may never visit the coastal borderlands?
I think I would start off by explaining that Brownsville is the largest single city here in the Rio Grande Valley. So it is a major metropolitan area, whether people want to admit it or not. And Matamoros as well is even bigger of a city. I would describe Boca Chica Beach as Brownsville's beach. That's how I've always heard it described. That's how people from Brownsville usually describe it. Is there's South Padre Island where you can go for tourist style beach, and there's Boca Chica Beach, which is Brownsville's beach. And that's more how I've understood it. And now that I've learned more, I also understand that Boca Chica Beach is a really sacred piece of land to First People here, and is an incredibly unique place when it comes to wildlife and the ecosystem. I'd always known that about the valley, but I feel like in this job, I've learned like, oh my gosh, it is incredibly unique and different in just this little area alone.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to my next question. In your op-ed, you mentioned the idea of double erasure, or is that how did I pronounce it right? Can you tell us what you mean? Can you tell us what you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of levels of erasure happening here. There's, I mean, the ultimate like neo-colonial level of erasure where they're literally trying to like colonize this area. And then we're dealing with the erasure in the way that like just straight up with our name, you know, they want to call this place Starbase now. Starbase Texas. He tags himself as Starbase Texas. Starbase doesn't exist. You know, they call it Boca Chica, Texas. Boca Chica, Texas doesn't exist. It's Boca Chica Beach, right? So there's that kind of erasure. And then we have the journalists that hop on it, right? And then refer to this place as Boca Chica, Texas only. Refer to it only as Starbase. When you get to like tech and space media, they don't even mention Brownsville, usually. There's no mention of the fact that there's, you know, hundreds of thousands of people living nearby. There's no mention of the fact that it's, you know, a cultural landmark to a lot of the people here. It's just, oh, this is Starbase Texas. And this is Elon Musk's SpaceX now. So there's, you know, I said double erasure, and the more that I keep thinking about it, the more that I'm like, maybe it was like triple or quadruple erasure. Like there's just so many layers, you know, once you really start to think about it of what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it's not just the people, it's the nature that lives on here, or that lives on these lands, you know, it's
such Christopher Columbus behavior.
Yeah. And part of my next question is not about SpaceX and Elon Musk, but the other thing that we were going to talk about today, which was LNG, right? Liquid, I think it's liquid natural gas, if I'm not mistaken.
Liquefied natural gas.
Liquefied natural gas. How would you describe that? Or if you could describe it to somebody who's not too familiar what LNG is.
Okay, well, I'm going to be totally honest. I'm not the best person to describe this. If I misspeak, please, like, don't put that on the record. Nobody get mad at me. Don't send me hate mail. It's liquefied, right? Natural gas that does come from fracking. And so with the LNG terminals, which I don't know if you want to like circle your little cursor near where they are, if you want to look over there. Yeah, those are where the proposed LNG sites, where they would hold this liquefied natural gas, right? In big giant like storage tanks. There's supposed to be like ground flares with it as well. I mean, it's a dirty fuel when it comes down to it, right? It's dirty oil, it's fracking. It's super dangerous because it's all of this liquefied natural gas sitting in big storage units that close to an existing pipeline, a proposed pipeline, SpaceX, yeah, all of the wildlife reserves, the beach, Port Isabel, Laguna Madre, like it goes on. So yeah, look, those, I feel like these pictures really help if I'm not being super clear about exactly what LNG is. I'm going to be honest, I'm not a STEM major. I'm still learning a lot of the science as well.
I think the most important thing, it's about the destruction that comes with it and the continual use of fossil fuels and dirty fuels.
Yeah,
it supports. It's investing.
Exactly.
It keeps supporting.
If you've ever driven down Highway 48 to get to South Padre Island from Brownsville, it would be a lot of the land past the boat ramp to your right-hand side, a lot of that green space where, you know, it's up on the right-hand side all the way up to once you get to Port Isabel, where like HEB is. That land on the right-hand side, all of that beautiful green spaces where they're trying to build these LNG terminals, which is gross.
It is. It's a beautiful place out there. I used to drive down that road to get to Brownsville all the time when I was living there.
It's a beautiful drive.
It is a beautiful drive. And I used to love watching the families fishing there on the Bahia Grande and the Brownsville Ship Channel. there's so many people that depend. Yeah, like I see in the comments. Oh, that's a big comment by Isidro. But yeah, there's so many people that depend on fishing and shrimping, and this would literally change the whole region and cause more destruction and make it so that we're struggling, in the future, in the long term.
Yeah,
This is,
it can cause, a lot of cumulative effects to the surrounding communities. There's a lot of cumulative effects that can happen to the actual like wildlife, the nature around it, especially if there's anything like a spill or a leak, which these guys are like known for. I feel like most oil and gas companies have like the worst track record.
Yeah.
So we're not super trustworthy of it, especially with their current ploy to seem more green. So like recently they've proposed a carbon capture storage project, which carbon capture, I'm sure a lot of people have their own opinions on it. From what we understand from an environmental standpoint, carbon capture is a scam, ultimately. The whole idea is to neutralize carbon so that these guys feel better about fracking for oil and gas, but it really ends up being like at the very best a moral neutral. And even then, a lot of the facilities are very harmful to the environment. And the main issue when it comes down to climate change and emissions isn't really carbon, it's actually methane. But oil and gas companies love to pull the whole, we need carbon capture storage, watch your carbon footprint, so that we're not paying attention to their methane emissions.
Yeah, and that's, a lot of it is PR, right? Public relations, what we see in media. Right now, most people around the world have probably already heard that Elon Musk is going to be one of the first persons to colonize or colonize Mars, take people to Mars, and he's selling everybody on this idea. But that comes at the expense of Boca Chica Beach and part of the Lower Rio Grande Valley Wildlife Refuge and the livelihood of a lot of people that live in Brownsville and the surrounding areas. So like, I'd like to ask if there are any, what are the biggest differences you've seen since SpaceX started their construction and also their launching of rockets?
Sure. I think one of the biggest changes that most people have seen have been the road closures. There were, I believe last year, they exceeded over 1,000 hours of road closures of Highway 4, which if you want to like point out where that is with your little cursor, that would be helpful. Highway 4, that whole street down here. Yeah. So that's how you get to Boca Chica Beach from Brownsville. They had over 1,000 hours of road closures last year. We haven't gotten the calculation for this year, but a lot. And then with their new proposed Starship Super Heavy project, that would add, I believe they wanted to add another 800 hours of road closures. So that's one of the big issues is people from Brownsville are having trouble accessing the beach as a whole. And I think that's one of the main changes, especially for consistent beachgoers that they've seen, besides obviously like the physical ones of like, there's this huge facility right behind the beach. Yeah, you know what I mean? The beach looks like that when you go there now, obviously besides that. We've also seen a huge influx of, I'm just gonna be honest, white people, specifically like white guys. And I think that kind of has to do with Elon Musk's whole like move to Brownsville tweet. And so that's caused issues within the city. We're now looking at kind of like a housing crisis. Rent has already been raised. Things are getting quickly gentrified. Things are getting more expensive here. And I don't know if everybody's put 2 and 2 together that it is directly tied to the industry that's coming to this city. But I'm gonna try my best to make sure everybody knows why this is happening. Yeah, I agree, Myra. Beware of tech bros. The tech bros are definitely coming here. We've seen a lot of new apartment complexes go up, luxury living, all that BS. So those are some definitely big changes. I think some more subtle changes have been the increase in floods here. I think that there are a lot of reasons for why we've been flooding, a lot of things that have to do with infrastructure and with climate change, but I think that SpaceX and their continued expansion is definitely not helping because they're flattening floodplains. And that's, you know, one of the things that they want to add on with this Starship Super Heavy project is like permanent damage and erasure, I think, of something like over 20 acres of floodplains or something like that. I did know this off the top of my head, but I can't remember right now. It's been a day. But
yeah,
obviously more destruction to more acres of floodplains equals more flooding, more destruction to our infrastructure that already is just absolute garbage here. More, you know, issues with wildlife. We've seen, I think ocelots have been hit by cars. Somebody died in a car accident on Highway 4 because of road closures. The piping plover, which is a bird that's native specifically to that one little area of Boca Chica, is nesting significantly less. So the environmental differences are a little bit more subtle, but I think we are starting to really see some social and like city issues. And it's difficult because our elected officials don't want to listen to us, or they think that we're full of it, or they keep talking about how great this is and how it's revitalizing our economy. Yeah, like there's a really fun Twitter screenshot of Jessica Tetro, who's one of our city commissioners, who's basically like an Elon Musk fan girl, being ridiculous on the internet. Yeah, the SpaceX documents for the Starship Super Heavy project did say that rocket explosions could boil an ocelot like alive, which is really freaky. It could cause a sonic boom if it explodes. And his supporters say that, you know, it's just like fireworks that they explode at Louis' backyard. It's not the same at all. And I'm like, really? Because when they exploded the Falcon 9, which are significantly smaller, people felt their windows shake. There were debris all over people's front yards, on the beach, and the road. My grandma lives off of Price Road here in Brownsville, and she felt it at her house. And we saw the launch from our window here, and I live on the west side, like a decent ways away here in Brownsville. So it's not as subtle as they think it is.
It's not. You know, everything from closing the beaches, even though Texas is supposed to be open public beaches. They're trying to bend the law as much as possible. And we've seen that. But what are the real dangers of having both SpaceX LNG, having both SpaceX and LNG at their sites? We saw on the map that they're so close together.
Yeah.
I know you've already talked a little bit about the floodplains, but what else? Yeah, what else do you think you can mention?
Well, I mean, they're the usual, you know, things that happen when you have large industry, right? And so I see Myra's talking about air pollution. There is, you know, a lot of issues. There will be issues with air pollution. They actually have to get permits to get permission to pollute the air, and they have for LNG, which is kind of funny. Issues with wildlife, things like that. With their proximity, I think that we're looking at a possibly incredibly dangerous situation if all of these projects continue and are built and are expanded. I think you can see like all of that green space, all of the green on there is, you know, like untouched green space. Those are wildlife refuges. So we have like Laguna Atascosa with the Bahia Grande, which you can see when you drive down Highway 48, and then the lower Rio Grande Valley Wildlife Refuge, which is literally right where SpaceX is, even though they swear it's going to have no effect. I don't think that's true, like at all. SpaceX has done no due diligence, and I feel like LNG really hasn't either. And I think with their proximity and how often things go wrong with oil and gas and things blow up at SpaceX, we're looking at a potentially really volatile and dangerous situation for not only the wildlife and the environment around it, but for the surrounding communities. You know, with SpaceX alone, with their Starship Super Heavy project, right? It said it could cause a sonic boom. And the image that they showed us of where the sonic boom would like the radius of it is incredibly large. And I think to deny that any kind of explosion would like leave LNG completely untouched or leave the pipelines completely untouched is delusional. You know, I mean, if you're planning to store these huge giant tanks full of liquefied natural gas and fly the world's biggest rocket within a 10-mile radius, I'm no scientist, but all that screams to me is explosion. And that's, you know, incredibly deadly.
Yeah, and if you're asking what you can do, Becca in the comments put a link to send a public comment. So right now, Rio Grande LNG, there's public comments that can be sent to FERC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, so the Federal Energy Regulatory Committee is where, you know, Rio Grande LNG is trying to get their carbon capture storage project approved. If you want to let them know that you oppose that carbon capture storage project, you can use the link that Becca just sent in there. And yeah, we need to send in comments before December 20th to demand that they reject it, because carbon capture storage is BS and Rio Grande LNG is BS. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I do really love these photos of like what it looks like and what it will look like, because the photos that they show us are very different.
And I guess I wanted to ask, just so people that maybe might not have been keeping up, I know that there's been some victories when it comes to LNG. I don't know if you're familiar with them, or you can talk about a few.
Yeah, let's talk about some victories. I know I just gave like all of the scary things about how terrible all of this is, but it's cool. We win sometimes, guys. Don't worry. So I'm gonna go through, I can go through our 2021 victories.
Yeah, please.
Cool. So, or 2020, 2021. So November 2020, France, there was a French company called, I forget, I never know how to pronounce it. I think it's Engie, or NG, I could be wrong. They're a French company. They ended negotiations to import gas from Rio Grande LNG. And there were a lot of years of international protests and international organizing between the RGB and France to urge the French government to stop importing it. And then in 2021, in January, Rio Grande LNG also lost Ireland as a customer. So the Port of Cork, Ireland, got rid of their MOU, which I think is like Memorandum of Understanding, I believe. To build Cork LNG to import gas from here, Rio Grande LNG to Cork LNG, but they're not doing that anymore. And that was a really cool victory from thousands of petitions sent from Texans and different Irish communities. And there was a large public protest at the Port of Cork, and they met with Port of Cork officials. And so Rio Grande LNG lost that one too. One of our big victories was in March 2021 when Annova LNG canceled their entire project. So there used to be 3 proposed LNG sites, but one of them has recently been canceled. And we hope all the rest of them get canceled too. That's our goal eventually. So that was a really big win. And then in July 2021, 35,000 petition signatures were sent to an Australian bank called Macquarie to stop supporting Rio Grande LNG and to stop fracking in Australia. So you can see like this oil and gas industry is not just affecting us. Like this isn't just our fight either. This is international. And so it's really important to make sure that we have like this community solidarity, because that's the only way we're going to win. And then most recently was August 2021, we had a lawsuit victory. So FERC, who we were just talking about, the Federal Energy Regulatory Committee, they have to re-review their climate and environmental justice impacts of Rio Grande LNG, Texas LNG, and the Rio Bravo pipeline. And that was some really good work that was done by the city of Port Isabel, TRLA, which is Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, and they have some clients in Laguna Heights, and also the Sierra Club. So that was another win. So those are some fun wins. It does happen. We hope there's more. I did see that there was a question in the chat. Should I answer?
feel free to answer the question if you feel like you can.
Okay, what does Elon / SpaceX say about RGB community being concerned? Is that the question? I think it was Ruben who asked it. Is
Yeah,
that
I
correct?
think so. I think so.
Yes. Okay, cool. They say nothing is the short answer. We've had Elon Musk acknowledge us once. That was when he tweeted about giving Brownsville money. All the rest of the time, he pretty much refers to it as Boca Chica or Starbase. He has really made no comments that I've heard, at least, about all of our local opposition. Yeah, I mean, he tells outsiders to move here for jobs. That's about it. His PR team, they never respond for anything. We can't ever get a meeting with them. We can't ever get comments out of them. I think if you read any of like the articles that have been done about SpaceX recently, most of them have to put like SpaceX declined to comment. So that's the easy answer is nothing. They don't care. Are there any more questions?
Well, we can open it up for some more questions in a little bit. I just quickly wanted to go over some calls to action. I know we talked about leaving the comment before December 20th and the links in the chat. Any other things that people should be looking out for or actions that they can take right now?
The big one is turning in a comment. That would be super duper helpful because we need as many as we can. I would definitely try to stay plugged in by maybe following either me and Becca or, you know, any of our, what are they, the allied organizations that Sergio is going to show soon, because we do use social media, especially right now because of the pandemic. That's like one of our big ways to get action items out. And that's a really good way to stay involved. I also recommend following Another Gulf is Possible specifically if you want to stay connected on these issues, because they're really cool and they always post great stuff about it. I'm just plugging Becca now. I'm just kidding, but yeah. Anyone can give a comment. Please share with your networks. You don't have to live in Brownsville. You don't have to be from Brownsville. Anybody can send a comment. So please, if you can, it's cool if it's short and just like, don't do this. That would be helpful. But yeah, and these are some other organizations that we work with a lot and do similar work to us, which is Another Gulf is Possible. Becca just threw the website in the chat and the Twitter link. Definitely go follow that. And the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe of Texas. We work really closely with the tribe and we do a lot of work to try to center Indigenous voices in our work. And I just think that's a good recommendation for anybody. You know?
Yeah, and I think we might have somebody, or I know I was mentioned a couple people from the Esto'k Gna.
Yeah, we have a few tribal members in here.
If anybody wants to say anything, Juan or Krista, the space is yours. If not, it's okay.
Well, I mean, let Krista speak a little bit, and then I'll fill in the gaps.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Krista Mancias. I am the executive director for the 501c3 for the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe of Texas. So, you know, I mean, the area that, and a great job, Emma, for, you know, doing all the work. Giving all the details and stuff that's been happening there with SpaceX and the LNGs. You know, we all work well together, and we've been doing this fight for a couple of years now, especially in Boca Chica and Garcia Pasture. In 2020, of May of 2020, the Carrizo Comecrudo tribe had a tribunal done about Garcia Pasture. It was a tribunal for human rights. This tribunal has been very successful and is being used nationwide with a lot of organizations, a lot of Native organizations, also to teach how to use a tribunal for law purposes. So for indigenous rights. And so it's been very successful. It got the word out that there was something happening at Garcia Pasture. And, you know, we've been very successful in that area with all our victories, working together, not as individuals, but working together as a community, as, you know, as groups and organizations to be successful, to be able to have postponed and stop some of these actions from these LNG terminals, which is really great. And it's going to continue. Like, our success in that area is going to continue. Things are happening in that area, even though with SpaceX, which is really disgusting and very hard to be there when and look at these sites. If you haven't been there, I suggest people should go down there and visit. But the area that is Garcia Pasture is a known village site and is a protected site. So historically, we wanted to make sure that it becomes a historic site in the future, tribal wise, just because it is one of our last known villages for the people there at the in that area. But yeah, as you know, I mean, we're just gonna continue this fight and work with each other, and we're glad that a lot of people are trying to center our voice, our native voice in around the area, as a connection as the original peoples of the land. So we will continue to work with anybody who's willing to work with us, and we look forward to going into the next year. So Dad, do you have anything you want to say?
No, that's why I think that we have to stay on top of dealing with Musk and letting him know that he's worthless. And you know, I for one submitted a request for him to do an EIS for Mars and any other planet that they decide to visit, because you can't come in there without a prime directive. And of course, what they did here, when they came over here, and they're doing the same thing to other planets. 500 years ago, you know, they came in with their attitude of this is a new world, just because they had ships they could cross over with. I wish they would have just fallen off the edge of the world, but you know, of course, the world is round. We already knew that. But again, you know, the whole thing is, you know, trying to change the perspective and the narrative that's there, to make them realize that what we can do is put them in the world's eye as the criminals that they are, the war criminals that they are, the genocide that continues to go on with this area. And I think we as individuals have to be careful about how we talk about colonization, that if we're going to decolonize, that we're not recolonizing, not taking their perspective, their education, and applying it to a new form of life. Otherwise, you know, we're going to become the Elon Musks, you know, and I don't want to be anything like Elon Musk. I want to be able to you know, continue to be the native person that recognizes the fact that there are ocelots and they are walking around. But you know what? We are too. We as native human two-leggeds are still walking around there too. And he's being very offensive to the disrespect of our ancestors. And I would say that many of y'all probably carry, you know, a little bit of the blood of the people of the area, and that you're native. And you have to be aware that, you know, we're also an endangered species in the eyes of ourselves. We can't see, and we can't stand up and fight these crazy people. There's some good news coming, believe me. We've held them this long with the help of Becca and the another Gulf if possible, and RGV and everybody's, you know, working together on this. But again, you have to recognize that there are original people that belong on this land, and we're starting to reclaim a lot of that in a good way. You know, utilizing the colonized ideals that are not values. There's not a value system, and we have to recognize what kind of a values system we do have. And for one thing that I learned as a child was we don't compromise our principles or our values. We can compromise expectations, what we expect, but you know that's because that's a selfish need. Expectations, it's my individual wants. But when it comes to principles and values, it belongs to the community. It belongs to how I was raised. It belongs about, and that's where, you know, we start defining what is moral according to the original people of the land, not according to a colonized mentality or one that's Christian based. And we have to learn, and we have to understand what the doctrine of discovery has to say to us, and how they treated us and how they treated our ancestors to take this land, to continue this fight that we're fighting right now. You know, to tell them, no, you can't be desecrating the land anymore. It's, you know, I mean, these are villages. These are people who are buried here, you know, and of course, you know, you're killing the wildlife that is dependent and that rides our legacy. And I think that it's important to understand that, because those are our clans, those are our relatives in a deeper sense. You know, we're related to those animals. That's why, and to the plants, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of those plants have been taken away. So I just wanted to share that with you. So
Thank you, Juan. I actually did not know that SpaceX and these LNGs were digging up the ancestral remains there. So thank you all for sharing that today. And we are running out of time, but we will open it up for questions. But before that, I'm going to stop the recording. So we're going to